Think about it as a carpenter who's coming to your house to do a renovation. You expect that the carpenter is going to show up with a hammer on his belt and a big long level with bubbles in it so that he can put on the walls that he's making and make sure they're level. But these days, he's also going to show up with a few more things.
Shaping the future of the Alliance, this is the Transformation Brief. I'm your host, Jackie Faye Burton. Before we get started, let me tell you, Rick Perks, our guest today, tried to pawn off his podcast duties to someone else, someone younger. But I dug up this photo of Rick when he was 25. And Rick, tell me a little bit about this photo. Where were you?
That is somewhere in the middle of the North Atlantic. That's aboard the U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS America. That's probably back in about 1987 or 88. I was about 25 years old.
Okay, and what is in the background there? We got some airplanes.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those airplanes, the only place you see them these days is on a stand in front of a building. We got some F-14 Tomcats I can see, and that's about when the Top Gun movie came out. So the same sort of airplanes that we see in that movie.
Okay, so you said we need to hear from someone from the next generation, but there are very few people that have had the past that you have, from 25-year-old in the Atlantic Ocean to seeing the way NATO's transformation has come to fruition. You also served in the Canadian Armed Forces, worked at NATO headquarters, and then you came to Allied Command Transformation, where you helped to write the NATO warfighting capstone concept. And now you're the program manager for the work on Flex, which is an extension of Force Lethality Enhancement. So today, Rick, we're not talking about age. We are talking about experience, adaptation, and how your work as a future war planner has changed and why NATO must change with it. Rick, welcome to the Transformation Brief.
Thank you very much, Jackie Faye.
All right, so real simple, what has changed in the preparation of conflict?
Well, our preparation is essentially the same in terms of the way we plan. We plan for the different type of operations that we expect. We plan for the types of capabilities that we're going to need to bring to a fight. But what has changed is how quickly, the speed with which we have to change, the speed with which we have to adapt. Advantage is fundamental. It always has been in warfare, but the pursuit of advantage is fundamental. And the way that things are changing with technology, with new approaches to warfighting, the character of warfare is changing. We have to get ahead of that. And so it's the speed with which we have to move forward.
Okay, so let's talk about Force Lethality Enhancement more broadly, and then we can zoom in on Flex. And we've heard this line a lot, that we don't want to use $1 million missile to shoot down a $1,000 drone. Why is it so important to reduce the cost per shot?
Well, first of all, let's speak to the word lethality. Lethality is a big word, and it means different things to different people. To some people, they think lethality, well, that just means a bigger hammer, doesn't it? But lethality is more than that. Lethality is about effectiveness. It's about speed. It's about precision. It's about efficiency. It's about affordability, coming back to that $1 million missile that you mentioned. Think about it as a carpenter who's coming to your house to do a renovation. You expect that the carpenter is going to show up with a hammer on his belt and a big long level with bubbles in it so that he can put on the walls that he's making and make sure they're level. But these days, he's also going to show up with a few more things. He's going to show up with a laser level to give him a little more precision. He's going to show up with some nail guns, different nail guns for different types of nails that'll be more effective for the different shots that he needs to take. So he's still going to have the hammer on his belt. He's still going to have that level, but he's going to bring some more things that will enable him to work faster, will enable him to work more precisely, and most importantly, more efficiently. So it's going to cost you less because he's going to finish the job sooner. So Force Lethality Enhancement is about doing those things. We have excellent capability development programs in our alliance. We have a NATO defense planning process with which we use to identify what are the capabilities that allies need to bring and commit to the alliance. We have a common funded capability development process, and that identifies the things that NATO brings based on a common funded approach. So these things work, they work well, they've built up the most lethal force in the world. We have a formidable force in the alliance, but adversaries are starting to counter our ability to prevail, our advantage. They're chipping away at advantage in different
With
areas.
very cheap technology.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
cheap technology is something that they use to unlock our vulnerabilities, for example. So how can we, in concert with our very good planning processes, identify ways to do things more lethal, faster, with more precision, with more efficiency, and costing less?
Yeah.
So
I do love the example of the carpenter, especially since I'm doing some renovations on my house right now. I have a very old home that was built in 1910. And so, you know, everything is a little crooked. So those lasers that can say, you know, this wall is not exactly at a 90-degree angle have been helpful. But yeah, it's, you know, when it comes to defense requirements, for decades, they were big, expensive, and slow. Like I said, you know, technology from our adversary has really changed the way we look at that. How does Flex help NATO move from A to B faster and cheaper?
I would say big, expensive, slow. I would call them more exquisite. We've evolved tremendously, and we have the best capabilities in the world as an alliance. It takes a long time to develop those capabilities. And in the meantime, adversaries are using technology, they're using new ways to, as I mentioned earlier, attack our vulnerabilities. So they are challenging us, and contemporary warfare shows that adversaries are challenging each other with mass, with much more mass of cheaper, inexpensive capabilities. Now, using those exquisite capabilities to take down a drone or a drone decoy is just not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So moving from A to B is moving faster and adapting faster. It's continuing to field those exquisite capabilities, but it's also bringing in new ideas, new ways, new technologies so that we can complement and enhance our lethality.
Okay, and so, I mean, you kind of hit the point already, but talking, you know, I think people are worried this isn't going to replace the capabilities we already have. This is to complement those.
Exactly. It's going to help us to use those capabilities and do better with those capabilities, bringing more to the table. So, for example, if we have a broader mix of capabilities, we can make choices. How do we take down a drone, for example, with an expensive missile or with a essentially zero-cost laser shot? So as more options become available, allies can choose to invest in those options and bring those things into the capability mix so that we have a much better mix of capabilities in terms of lethality, back to lethality, effectiveness, speed, precision, and efficiency.
Okay, and I think cost also, it's not always a money cost, it's also a people cost.
And one of the things, the challenges that I think all nations have in demographics across the world, adversaries, NATO allies alike, is the challenge to bring people into militaries. And people are expensive. People need training. It takes a long time to train people. So how can we protect the people that we have in the military in the most effective ways? Can we use technology to replace people, especially in areas where there's significant danger?
Yeah.
So some of the options that we're looking at in force lethality enhancement, again, effectiveness. Can we use autonomous systems where people were used in the past? Another way you could do that is you could use manned systems plus autonomous systems together. So it reduces the requirement for people and gives you choices for other systems, I shouldn't say manned, I should say crewed, uncrewed systems. It gives you choices on what capabilities you put in harm's way.
Okay, and you know, could potentially, like you mentioned, especially in dangerous situations, save lives. But FLE is about addressing current capabilities. Flex is about shaping the future force. But as we know, adaptation doesn't stop. Flex is not going to stop either. Why is continuous experimentation so critical?
Well, because adaptation towards advantage is a pursuit. In the past, where the cost of entry to big, exquisite capabilities was high, we easily maintained advantage in the world. But now with newer technologies, maintaining that advantage is much more difficult, and it needs to be pursued on an ongoing basis. And that requires thinking, and that requires looking at new options, new ways of doing things. So FLE is focused on delivering capabilities that we know we need in different ways. Flex does the same, but what Flex also does is it looks at emerging operational problems. The challenges of drone swarms, for example, that can yield a threat. So how do we deal with those in the most efficient way at an affordable cost so that we don't have to use those exquisite capabilities on these cheaper threats?
Okay, and are some of these solutions multinational?
Yes, yes. And in fact, the idea behind Flex is to identify the options that allies can choose to invest in, and they can work together. So allies can work together to develop these capabilities, to work to field them together. And again, it's just part of that notion of increased lethality.
Okay, all right. And 32 nations strong, we certainly have the advantage of working together there. Well, before we wrap, on a lighter note, you have a boat called Sailor's Delight. And that's not a naval reference. That's your dog. Tell us about Sailor.
Sailor is a miniature schnauzer, and he's the most lovable little boy ever, and he loves the boat. So we have him out, all the time in the boat. We love to go out at sunset on the Chesapeake Bay. So, a maritime saying, "Red sky at night, sailor's delight," means things are looking favorable. And so sailors out at night looking at the red sky. So we called the boat Sailor's Delight after our sweet baby boy.
Oh, what a really great story. Rick, thank you. What really stands out from this conversation is that Flex isn't about chasing the next shiny technology. It's about ensuring NATO can adapt at a pace required by today's security environment and tomorrow's. This is the essence of what we do at Allied Command Transformation. We decipher, design, develop, and deliver, so the alliance remains credible, effective, and ready for the future fight. That's all for this episode of the Transformation Brief. Thanks for listening.